The prospect of a nuclear war between Russia and NATO is the ultimate doomsday scenario, a catastrophic clash that would forever alter life on Earth. As I trace this grim possibility, we delve into the phases of escalation, destruction, and aftermath, highlighting the absurdity of it all. For in the face of total annihilation, humanity's hubris remains undiminished. As Albert Einstein once presciently remarked, "I know not with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones." I suggest all politicians watch the British TV show Threads.
Attack warning. Is it for real? Attack warning, it's for bloody real. Come on, quick, get down!
And the US film The Day After.
Hey!
Why would the so-called deep state want a final war that could wipe out billions of humans, destroy the wildlife, poison our water sources, and stop the football at the weekend? If indeed that is their goal, then what kind of world do they think will be left for them as they peer out from the nuclear bunkers to the sight of endless bodies and air contaminated with beta and gamma rays? Fallout is a great game, but I wouldn't want to live it. The nuclear clock begins its macabre ticking with a conventional flashpoint. Ukraine, most likely.
We need peace in Ukraine, a just peace in line with UN Charter, international law, and General Assembly resolutions.
Russia, frustrated by NATO's support for Kyiv, escalates its attacks. NATO responds with greater military aid, emboldening Ukrainian forces to strike Russian-held territories, possibly even within Russia itself. A critical moment occurs. Russia accuses NATO of direct involvement. Vladimir Putin, backed into a corner, issues a thinly veiled ultimatum. Withdraw NATO support or face the entire spectrum of Russia's capabilities. Then, a test of will ensues. Nuclear brinksmanship begins. A small, tactical nuclear weapon intended to incapacitate a military target without provoking full-scale war detonates in a symbolic act. Perhaps it strikes an isolated Ukrainian depot of the Black Sea Fleet. NATO, bound by Article 5 of its charter, faces a harrowing choice: retaliate and risk escalation, or back down and embolden Russia. Quoting General John Hyten, former Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, "Every move in a nuclear wargaming is a step into the unknown. You're dealing with emotions, miscalculations, and a chain reaction of responses that no one's fully controlling." Colonel McGregor states, "The US is not ready for war." Phase 2, the Firestone Unleashed. NATO retaliates, perhaps with a similar low-yield strike or a conventional military blitz. This provides Russia to escalate further. The distinction between tactical and strategic nuclear weapons evaporates as both sides resort to massive launches. Within minutes, hypersonic missiles streak across the globe. Key targets, including NATO bases, Russian silos and command centers. Strategic targets like London, Washington, Moscow, and Brussels vanish in a nuclear fireball. Within hours, secondary strikes target economic hub ports, factories, and cities. EMP detonations over Europe and North America fry all the electrical grids, leaving entire nations in darkness. There's no internet for communications, no heating, no hot water, and supermarkets, like we saw with COVID, emptied within hours. Within 24 hours, retaliatory strikes obliterate much of Earth's urban infrastructure. Hundreds of millions perish in the initial blasts, incinerated or crushed by shockwaves. Here's a chilling perspective from Dr. Alan Roebuck, an expert on nuclear winter. The world's largest nuclear arsenals could kill billions outright, but the real horror lies in what comes next, the slow starvation of those who survive. Phase 3, the nuclear winter. The aftermath is almost unimaginably bleak. As the mushroom clouds dissipate, soot and ash from firestorm rise into the stratosphere. A nuclear winter ensues, with sunlight blocked by particulates. Temperatures plummet globally, leading to failed crops and mass starvation. Electrical grids are obliterated. Most nations are plunged into a pre-industrial state. Transportation networks are annihilated. Fuel supplies gone, hospitals overwhelmed by radiation and burns and trauma. They collapse within days. Survivors are scattered, desperate, and without support. Cities become tombs of the dead and irradiated. Rural areas, while safer, suffer from lack of food and looting. Crops fail globally due to the lack of sunlight. Temperatures plummet by as much as 20 Celsius in key agricultural regions. Wildlife, vital for pollination and pest control, is annihilated. Without bees, many crops cease to exist. Livestock, exposed to radiation and burns, die en masse or become inedible. And then you've got the bunkers and the survivors, politicians, military officials, and ultra-wealthy. They'll retreat to their underground bunkers, but these refuges, far from being utopias, become prison-like tombs of paranoia and despair. Food stocks dwindle, breeding conflict among the elite. Engineers and scientists who are critical to rebuilding infrastructure are in short supply. After all, how many people down there have actually built a power plant? Rebuilding is hindered by the lack of healthy, skilled survivors. Civilization itself is reduced to isolated enclaves, incapable of industrial revival. The grim irony to this is those who engineered destruction now preside over ashes. Life within these bunkers becomes its own form of hell, a stark reminder that wealth and power cannot shield one from existential collapse. And life after the apocalypse, is it worth it? Well, here's the kicker. Survival might be worse than dying outright. Radiation sickness kills millions slowly and painfully. Survivors face cancers, genetic mutations, and infertility. The biosphere itself struggles to recover as ecosystems collapse in a toxic wasteland. Animals once vital to humanity's existence, fish, birds, and mammals, are decimated. Forests, unable to photosynthesize under the shroud of nuclear soot, wither and die. The chain of life is broken at every level. As Mark Twain once said, man is the only animal that blushes, or needs to. One suspects that survivors of a nuclear war would blush at the absurdity of having destroyed the world they sought to dominate. And what is the path to peace? Avoiding the abyss? Well, preventing this catastrophe is possible, but requires a departure from the brinksmanship and ego that brought us here. Brokering peace in Ukraine. How? Diplomatic neutrality, a negotiated settlement in which Ukraine adopts a neutral stance, agreeing not to join NATO, but retaining sovereignty. Then security guarantees. NATO could provide defensive assurances to Ukraine, whilst respecting Russia's concerns about NATO expansion. Then you could add economic incentives, offering reconstruction aid and trade agreements to both Ukraine and Russia to rebuild trust. Donald Trump's possible suggestions, though divisive, Donald Trump has a track record of unconventional diplomacy. His approach might include high-stake negotiations, a summit between Russia, Ukraine, and NATO powers focused on, his ego stroking, his speciality, while extracting concessions, economic leverage, using sanctions relief as a bargaining chip to secure peace, appeals to self-interest, convincing Putin that a deal would cement his legacy as a restorer of peace. But there is a flicker of optimism. Here's where we think about some hope. I mean, we've stared into the abyss before. Cuban Missile Crisis, for instance, and we chose sanity over destruction, thanks to Kennedy. The capacity for rationality, while dormant, still exists. Nuclear disarmament is not an impossibility. Through collective will and enlightened leadership, we could reduce stockpiles, strengthen other treaties, and prioritize diplomacy over this current aggression. And while the odds may seem bleak, consider this. The very fact that we're discussing this means we're still alive. We can laugh into the void. In the end, the absurdity of nuclear war lies in its self-defeating logic. Mad. As Christopher Hitchens noted, the only position that leaves me with no cognitive dissonance is atheism. It's not a creed. Death is certain, replacing both the siren song of paradise and the dread of hell. Life on this earth, with all its mystery and beauty and pain, is there to be lived far more intensely. Let us hope humanity chooses to live intensely, to embrace life rather than extinguish it. For if we destroy ourselves in a flash of anger, it will not be the machines or animals that laugh. It will be the universe, indifferent to all our folly. I'll leave you with this. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has this to say about Earth. Mostly harmless. Good luck.